Jai, Hare Krishna. We are starting the show, Bhagavad Gita, by Sri Krishna to Arjuna, with translations and purports by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Ki Jai. Let us begin with our Mangalacharana. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Anjana Shalakaya Chakshurummilitan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Just can you close that curtain there because it's got a big light behind my head. All right, so let's go to our memorization verse, 15:7 for the week. 15:7. Do you know this one, Drishta? Mamai Vamso? Okay, let's do this one. Mamai Vamso Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manasastan Yani Prakriti Stani Karshati. Again. Mamai Vamso Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manasastan Indriyani Prakriti Stani Karshati. And here's the The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. All right, everyone, let's do it. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind.
Which are grouped about the mind.
Which includes the mind.
Which include the mind. Grouped about the mind is another one where they're talking about how the living entity gets a particular eyes, nose, ears, mouth, throat, all that, which are grouped around the mind. Okay, so yesterday we did, yesterday we did sacrifices in the modes. We also did austerities, right? No, that was before. We did sacrifices in the mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. Oh yeah, then we did austerity of the body, austerity of the speech, and today we're going to do austerity of the mind. So yeah, I was saying that this is Krishna's instructions for good mental health, austerities of the mind. So let's read. So we're at 17:16. Mana prasada somyatvam monam atma vinigraha bhava samshudhir ityetat. Would you like to read, Daniel?
And satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of one's existence are the austerities of the mind.
To make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. It should be so trained that it always thinking of doing good for others. Best training for the mind is gravity and thought. One should not deviate from Krishna consciousness and must always avoid sense gratification. To purify one's nature is to become Krishna conscious. Satisfaction of the mind can be obtained only by taking the mind away from the thoughts of sense enjoyment. The more we think of sense enjoyment, the more the mind becomes dissatisfied. In the present age, we unnecessarily engage the mind in so many different ways for sense gratification. So there's no possibility of the mind's becoming satisfied. The best course is to bring the mind to the Vedic literature, which is full of satisfying stories, as in the Puranas and the Mahabharata. One can take advantage of this knowledge and thus become purified. The mind should be devoid of duplicity, and one should think of the welfare of all. Silence means that one is always thinking of self-realization. The person in Krishna consciousness observes perfect silence and its control of the mind means detaching the mind sense of him. One should be straightforward in his dealings and thereby purify his existence. All these qualities together constitute austerity in mental activities.
Yeah, all right. So let's spend some time on this verse. We can have a little bit of discussion. So these austerities of the mind, they seem like austerities, and yeah, they kind of are austerities. It's difficult to be satisfied. It's difficult to be simple. It's difficult to be grave, which is how Prabhupada translated monam, which means silent. And it's difficult to be self-controlled and pure. All these things are kind of difficult for the mind, right? Yeah. So we're talking about the mind. So what are some ways in which the mind, first of all, we'll look at the negative side. What are some of the ways that in which the mind struggles to be satisfied? Okay, like greed, right? We always want more. And the mind is always chasing after sense gratification, and it's never enough. Whatever it is, it's never quite good enough, right? Okay. How does the mind struggle with simplicity?
It wants more of it, like dopamine hits, and it just craves it more and more until it can't think of anything else.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of like the satisfaction part. Simplicity, okay, okay, so yeah, we're on to simplicity. So Pragati said overthinking. Yeah, the mind overthinks like anything, right? And what else? Okay, the mind complicates everything. Like usually we yeah, the mind likes to come up with all kinds of complicated ways of doing things because somehow simple is never good enough, right? Like it has to be something super complicated and convoluted and yeah. What were you saying, Pragati?
Like comparisons.
Okay, we compare ourselves to others and then we become jealous and yeah, and then we start feeling insecure or threatened or all these things go on in the mind. Like mind tells us all these mad things like you're not good enough, you need to put that person down, or that person's gonna come and get you and they're gonna like take over your position or take your happiness away from you somehow, or right? Mind makes us really get worried about a lot of things.
Yeah, it isn't like it tricks us. Even if we're happy, if we see some other person, we think that, oh, it's more happier than us, and
Yeah.
anything good with others, it will feel like, oh, they are more happy, even if you're having all of those things which they had.
Yeah, like the grass is always greener on the other side, right?
Yeah.
The other person always has a better life than me. My life is never good enough, and I wish I was that person. Or that person should suffer some way because it's not fair that they're happier than me. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you see sometimes when people like write books about philosophy, they try to just come up with some very complicated explanation, whereas usually the truth is very simple, like chant Hare Krishna and be happy or something like that. And then they have to come up with all these spiritual philosophies that are just so like abstract and just a lot of word jugglery that people read it and they can't understand it and they think, oh, this is far out. Why is it so far? Oh, because it's incomprehensible. The truth has to be incomprehensible. It has to be, yeah. So they try to make it as incomprehensible as possible, and then everybody's just confused and no one actually knows the truth. Okay, how about gravity? First of all, what does gravity mean? Weightful, like weight and pull. Yeah, like the gravity that pulls us down. So how does that relate to consciousness, our like thoughts? Okay,
Towards what,
gravity.
towards what we are pulled up, like where we are trying.
Okay, yeah, I'm thinking that grave, like if someone is grave, like if you think of a grave occasion, like what's a grave occasion, like a funeral, right? Serious, yeah. Yeah, like that's what I think of as terms of gravity, is like gravity of thought is when you think seriously, you're not being silly, you're not being frivolous, you're not being goofy, you're being very like pensive and serious and philosophical, right? You're trying to have like a philosophical view of life. You're trying to see through the eyes of scripture,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like that. And it's Prabhupada's translation of the word monam, which means silent. So, you can imagine like some people, they just talk all the time. And, I have a family member who just talks, and you talk, talkity, talk. And like, I don't know, somehow she just feels uncomfortable with silence. And so she feels like she has to fill up the space with all kinds of verbiage. And it doesn't matter what it is. So she'll just, she seems to have an endless supply of like trivial information. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And she doesn't seem to really mind whether anyone's interested in what she's saying or responding to what she's saying, or, so in that way, what happens is that everything just stays very superficial, right? If you're just like blabbing on and on about some mundane, trivial, information, then it's hard to go deeper, right? Sometimes like when we have moments of silence where we can just like sit and think, then our consciousness goes a little deeper. We can actually reflect. We can be introspective. So those moments of silence are actually very nice and very essential for human beings. Yeah, like sometimes we need to just like step back and take some time alone, do an alone with Krishna, right? And just be reflective. Or, it's nice too. I think it's really nice when we can do that with others, right? When we can have like quiet time, moments of silence with others. And just, you've been in a group setting where maybe someone throws a discussion question out and then it's like, okay, everyone just observe silence for like 2 minutes. And it's kind of like forced introspection, it's forcing you to think. And we're not in the habit of that. And a lot of people are not comfortable with that, just like being with other people in silence and like thinking about something. And it's good because after that moment of silence, then a lot of really deep things come out, a lot of nice, like, or positive, very sacred and beautiful. So it's an austerity for the mind because the mind is then forced to like gear down and go deep. Instead of just like, hee, ha, ha, oh yeah, this, that, the other thing, right? Which is easy. Okay. Self-control. This is Atma Vinigraha. So how is the mind challenged to control itself?
You're doing something. You have some attention.
Yeah.
You have to focus, like that's in and of itself.
Yeah, because the mind's nature, like Arjuna says, is chanchala, right? He says chanchala hi mana Krishna. It's like, oh Krishna, this mind is chanchala. It means it's all over the place. It's very restless, very fickle. And he says to control it seems to be more difficult than controlling the wind and harnessing the wind. It's just like whoosh, all over. And we experience that during japa, especially, right? When we're trying to hear the holy name and mind is like there's often a million and one directions everywhere except where we want it to be. So the nature of the mind is to be restless. And so self-control is an austerity for the mind, to just be like, all right, mind, we are going to do this. And we're just going to stick on this for the next hour, not think of anything else. Mind is like, no, you gotta be kidding. So it's an austerity. And then purification of one's existence. Bhava samshuddhi, purification of one's nature. How is that difficult for the mind to live a pure life?
Because that it has to give up a lot of things, that it's accustomed to. But
Yeah, good. The mind gets addicted to bad habits, right? That's what habit means, is something that the mind. Yeah, those bad habits, just by definition, are impure, right? That's why they're bad. So purification of existence means we need to let go of things that the mind would rather cling to. And so we have to really sometimes fight with the mind because it wants to go to those things and it pushes our senses in the direction of those things. And then intelligence has to be like, no, we're not doing that anymore. Right? So it's kind of painful for the mind. Okay, so that's all the ways that these things are austere, difficult for the mind. So now let's go back and look at how these things, if we can actually do them, are going to really help the mind, going to really nourish and aid and soothe and invigorate the mind, free the mind, liberate the mind. Okay, so satisfaction. Let's say the mind becomes satisfied. And you just, you end every day with counting your blessings and thinking of all the things that you're grateful for, all the things that went well. You're very focused on what you do have in your life. You don't even think about what you don't have. And you're just satisfied, it's really satisfied. So what does that do? How does that affect your mind and your consciousness?
Feeling of fulfillment, like
Fulfillment. Yeah, no more hankering, right? No more
no.
disappointment. Yeah. And gratitude makes you happy, right? When we feel those feelings of gratitude, appreciation, they're like little springboards into happiness. Yeah. So, yeah, when the mind actually can experience satisfaction, then the mind becomes very peaceful, happy, fulfilled, and then it becomes easier. And then, of course, these are all related. So then it becomes easier to be self-controlled, right? Because you're not hankering for anything anymore. You're just like, whatever it is, I'm satisfied. That's good. I'm fine. Yeah. And then simplicity. If we can just become simple and just be like, all right, simple living, high thinking, then how does that affect the mind in positive ways?
No, not a lot of things in a bucket, so you have small things to think on, and you have your, maybe I cannot explain, but you have very, very important stuff, and you do not go somewhere on a garbage. Keep it simple.
Yeah, so you're able to keep the main thing,
Yeah.
basically, right? And focus on really the important things of life, the essentials. Yeah, you can get all your things done because your life is not complicated, right? It's just simple. If you think back to simple, like a village life in Vedic culture when, you know, the families lived together and they worked on the land and they had their cows and they didn't have, you know, they didn't have mobile phones and all these things, weapons of mass distraction. And yeah, they didn't like the news that they got was just what was going on in the village. And yeah, they were very tuned in with nature and things like that. So simple life, you know, you get up in the morning and you go out to the garden, you pick some vegetables to cook breakfast, and you go out later and pull some weeds, or you let the cows out to pasture, you know, like simple life, you know, you churn butter, you grind some grains and you roll chapatis, and you know, it's just like simple, healthy life, physically healthy because you're getting exercise, you're getting fresh air, socially healthy because you're living, you know, in a family, in a village where everybody knows you, everybody, you know, cares about you. And you've always got someone to talk to. And then it's mentally healthy because yeah, because your mind doesn't have no major disturbances. So just simple living. And then because your life is simple, then you have more time. You can actually think clearly, you know, and you can think philosophically. Simple living and high thinking. You can think about Krishna, and you can think about yourself as a soul, and being in tune with nature also aids that, you know, when we see seasons and nature's cycles and the water cycle and cycles of this, start reflecting on, you know, the cycles of life, your own life and death, and, you know, where we're going after death and all that. Yeah.
Sorry to bother you, but is there any way we could wait to peel till after class? It's just very, very distracting and I'm trying to pay attention, but it's just very constant and I can't quite track what you're saying very
Hmm.
well. I've been trying really hard.
Uh,
But if I block it out, then I can't hear you.
you think so?
I think so. I know that I might not be able to just because I was gonna prepare for that from lunch tonight. And then we have this box and that box and that box.
Mhm.
We barely did anything. We only did a box and a half up till now.
Daniel's saying he's getting really distracted by the peeling.
Sorry, I've been trying to pay attention, but if I block out the feeling, then I can't hear Prabhupada Priya teach.
Do they have to roll in?
Maybe we could just pause for 30 minutes. It's almost like halfway through.
We're gonna have to roll.
6:30. Just put pause. There's an hour and a half. Well, let's say an hour. I have to clean up. Okay, so simplicity. All right, next thing is gravity. So gravity, yeah, if we can have more moments of silence in life. Oh, did you want to say something more about simplicity?
We know that we need to keep our mind simple and that will give us some clarity and peace.
Yeah.
But you know what happens? Like sometimes we feel we try to keep it simple, but to get this habit of making and thinking simple and keeping our mind simple.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, there are some things that help. For example, if we're always just very honest, right? If we're always honest, that's like helps keep everything simple, because as soon as we try to do something tricky, you know, or if we tell a lie, or if we're trying to get away with something, we're just making up excuses for not doing what we're supposed to do, then it becomes complicated, right? But if we're just, you know, very honest, very straightforward and truthful about everything, then that helps a lot to make life simple, right? Because then, you know, and also like open about our, you know, our feelings and things, to just express things. Otherwise, it becomes very complicated. Let's say someone says something that disturbs you, and then you just keep it inside, and then every time you see that person, becomes there's some resentment there, and then you start misinterpreting things that they say because, you know, you have this negativity towards them, and And then everything just becomes so complicated and it just builds and builds and it becomes like a whole trauma and everything. So it's better to just, like, just be very honest and open and say what needs to be said and just throw it out there in the open and without any resentment or, maliciousness or something, just be like, you know what, feeling like this right now. And then we can just address everything and in a mood of, compassion and care, and everyone can be peaceful. So that's one aspect of how to be simple. And another is to try to be who we are. Like, I guess that's also goes along with honesty, because sometimes we try to be someone that we're not, or try to, like in spiritual life, we pretend to be on a level of spiritual advancement that we're not quite there yet. And then we always end up trying to, there's only so long that you can maintain, a false position in any kind of like sphere. So the truth is gonna, like everyone's gonna figure it out. So yeah, if we're just like, all right, this is who I am, this is where I'm at, this is how I feel, this is, what it is. And then things become a little more simple, because then they'll accept us for who we are, we can be who we are, and then life becomes a lot easier. And then also another thing about simplicity is just accepting the simple process of Krishna consciousness. Like we just follow the program that Prabhupada gave us. It becomes complicated when we start, picking and choosing and trying to create our own concocted spiritual program and stuff. Then yeah, it becomes, we get self-doubt, we become insecure, we become defensive and things like that. But it's just like, okay, here I am in Krishna house and, trying to be members of ISKCON. We're following the program that Srila Prabhupada gave us. So, we just go along with the program, just like Mangalarti and Japa and Guru Puja and class and service or whatever it is. And just like get into a routine. It makes the life becomes simple when we get into a nice routine, a nice regulated, our day becomes regulated. Not that you wake up in the morning and every day you're going to be like, oh, what am I going to do today? Should I go? Shouldn't I go? Should maybe I'll go to part of it, or I'll skip this part, or I'll multitask during that part. It's just like unlimited options start coming up, and the mind is very good at like creating options. And then before you know it, you're just like opting out of your spiritual life. So it's better to just be like, okay, this is what I'm doing, and I'm just going to do this every day. This is my program. This is my lifestyle. This is my routine. And then the mind becomes very peaceful. You don't have to like, it just becomes a flow. You just get into a flow. You don't have to think about it anymore, right? And then because you don't have to think about what you're gonna do, you can actually, while you're doing that thing that you don't need to think about, you can actually think more deeply about what you are doing. You know what I mean? You don't have to spend like 20 minutes thinking, oh, should I go to Mangalarti or should I sleep in? You just go to Mangalarti very peacefully because you're used to waking up at that same time every day, and you just jump. You can be really meditating on the prayers and trying to connect deeply with Krishna and Guru and devotees and be attentive and, prayerful. So, that helps. So that simplicity also helps with the gravity, right? Because gravity means being thoughtful, being serious, going deep. Mm. Yeah, so gravity is also really good for mental health, because see, on the ocean, there's so many waves. But those waves are just on the surface. So if we stay just on the if our lives are superficial, our relationships are superficial, our spiritual practice is just superficial, then it's going to be wavy. It's going to have ups and downs. But the deeper we go, the more still it is. Like when you go into the ocean, the more deep you go down, there's no movement at all. Down at the bottom of the ocean, it's like completely still. So yeah, the deeper we go in our spiritual life, then the more peaceful it's going to be, and we won't be disturbed. And this is where studying the scriptures helps, because when we read Bhagavad Gita, when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, it gives us that perspective, the transcendental perspective on things. And then when things happen in life, we can think about them philosophically, right? We can step back, be a little detached from what's going on, and just be like, all right, what's really happening here? And then reflect on the nature of the material world, on the purpose of human life, on, the work that I need to do on myself to make myself spiritually qualified to go back to Godhead, and how this is actually Krishna's mercy, how Krishna is the supreme controller, and all these things, and then we can have a philosophical, spiritual perspective on our situation, and that will give us the nice what do you call it, the mental clarity and resilience. That's what that will give us, resilience, so that we can just remain equipoised, that's the result of having like good philosophical understanding, that we can remain equipoised and not be disturbed by happiness and distress, honor, dishonor, fame and infamy, success or failure. You just see that everything is Krishna's mercy, and it's all for my purification. And this is the purpose of my life, is to purify myself of conditioning, become a pure devotee. And this is all helping me. So this is gravity, right? Thinking deeply, thinking philosophically about our life, and not just reacting to every little, up and down, every little twist and turn in life. Otherwise, if we're just on the surface and just reacting and reacting and reacting, and then we're always disturbed. So you see, like, this is really, really important, these things: satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, so important for mental health. You see, because satisfied means you're always just like, yep, I don't need anything, I'm good. I accept that Krishna's controlling according to my karma. I have a certain quota of, wealth and fame and beauty and whatever, that I'm going to have in my life. And yeah, and that's what it is. And I just, do my honest, and I'll just be happy with whatever gain comes easily from that. Simple and satisfied, and try to think more deeply, right? And then self-control makes the mind very peaceful, because if the mind is uncontrolled, Krishna says in the 6th chapter that the uncontrolled mind is our greatest enemy. It just drives us absolutely nuts, right? Because it's jumping here, and then, oh, I have to do this, and then it goes there. Oh, I want that, and it goes here, and oh, that person said that I need to go talk to them, and it's like pushing us in all these different directions, and it's really like overwhelming and disorienting and troubling. But if we just control the mind, you're like, actually, no, I'm not going to think about that right now. I don't need to go there right now. I don't need to talk to that person right now. Can just give it some time. And, let's just read Bhagavad Gita, or let's just chant a little bit of japa, or let's just like do some service and make sure that I have done all the things that I have to do today first, and sleep on it, and, see how we feel in the morning. Right? Like that, just control the mind, and try to, and just rein it in from being so reactive and restless and passionate, right? And then we can just be like really peaceful, because most things we actually don't need to respond to immediately. We don't need to react. Nowadays, now it's like the age of like instant communication. Somebody sends you a message, and it's like they want a response like now. And especially if they saw that you saw it and you didn't respond, then so anyways, it's like, even with those correspondence, we can, if it's not urgent, we don't have to, people can wait. They used to wait, right? When I was a kid, it's like you wrote a letter. It took maybe a couple of days. You wrote a letter, you put it in the envelope. You had to go to the post office to buy a stamp, maybe a couple of days before you got around to going to the post office. Then you put it in the mailbox. Then it takes like a few days to get there. So maybe it takes a week from the time you actually like sit down and write the letter to the time the person gets it. And then they have to read it, and then they have to think about it, and then they have to like write it. And They have to go to the post office and get a stamp and then drop it, you know? Maybe if they live in the countryside, they might have to like drive into town to send it. Anyways, so life went on. I fell and, you know, economy failed because people had to wait a week to get a reply. So, yeah, we can try to slow things down and don't feel like all this pressure, like the weight of the world is on me. I have 300 WhatsApp messages and 55 emails came today, and you know, I need to like clear them all out before I go to bed tonight, and then up till midnight, and then you wake up in the morning and it all starts again, right? So, yeah. And then purification of one's existence. How is purification good for mental health? First of all, what are the things that we need are purifying ourselves of?
Maybe
Okay, sinful activities, bad thoughts, huh?
even thought.
Evil thoughts, bad habits. Yeah, also bad qualities, right? Like lust and greed and envy and pride and anger and all these things. Yeah, so just imagine if we didn't have those things, if we never had a bad thought, if we never did a sinful activity, if we didn't have any bad karma coming, if we didn't have any lust or greed or envy, just how nice life would be if we never got angry.
Yeah.
You know, if we didn't have any pride or false ego, you know, so nice. Yeah, imagine how your mind would just be like, ah, Jai, Krishna, everything is good.
Even thinking of that, it feels light mind.
And just envisioning a life like that, you feel like, yeah, wow, so nice. Yeah, so Krishna knows what we need here for good mental health. So the point here is that even though these things are austerities, right? We talked about how it's difficult for the mind to be satisfied, to be simple, to be grave, to be self-controlled, to perform activities which lead to purification. But if we actually just do them anyway, then what a great life it will be, right? How calm, how peaceful, how balanced, you know, will be that person that people are coming to, you know, like, please help me. How are you so peaceful? How are you so balanced? How are you so like equipoised and calm? It's a great mystery for people nowadays. Nowadays, people just have to take drugs. You know, they just have to take medication because they don't know this science of how to be peaceful and happy in mind by these austerities. Okay. Any other thoughts about the austerities of the mind? Drishta? No. Don't seem understood by that. Well, you have to be satisfied, simple, grave, self-controlled, and purify your existence. There you go. Oh, triple S GP. Self-controlled. It's the GPS. 3 S's. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Just one question. We have to think like what we should do and what should not be do, and like so that we will be self-controlled and not make our mind complex. So
Yeah.
how do we decide like which?
What to do and what not to do.
Yeah, sometimes like you are in a position where you have to like when you were talking, I had a really good thought with my head.
Yeah, so in relation to what, self-control?
Yeah.
Hmm.
After like we talk something bad about someone and then we realize, oh no, I should not have talk about that.
Hmm. Yeah, well, we know some things, from the scriptures that like Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Instruction, he says there are 6 things that basically destroy pure devotional service. So these are the things that actually like counteract purity, right? They block us from becoming pure devotees of Krishna. So he says those are atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha jana sangas chaloyam cha sadbir bhaktir vinashiti. So atyahara means overeating or over collecting. So it means yeah, just literally eating too much or eating the wrong things or eating at the wrong times. And then over collecting means you're just focusing too much on earning money, more money than you need, or accumulating things, kind of like just having this attitude of taking, taking, and taking, and accumulating and hoarding and things like that, rather than just, taking what you need, having a nice mood of giving back, and just sticking to the basic necessities of life, which is related to simplicity, right? So yeah, atyahara. So atyahara is literally the opposite of simplicity and satisfaction. It's like greediness, basically. Well, greediness comes later, but atyahara, overeating, overcollecting. And then prayas means over endeavoring for mundane things. So that's like just working very hard. Like some people will work, 2 jobs, 18 hours a day or something, and just like pushing themselves, burning the candle at both ends, as we say, like waking up early, going to bed late, and then having to drink coffee all day just to stay awake and functional, and then, causing disease to the body because they're not able to eat because they don't have time because they're just over endeavoring, they're working too hard, and then they're pushing themselves and they just have to eat like fast foods or, convenience food or junk food or whatever they can grab on the run because they're always just like hustling. So yeah, that destroys purity, because purity, the mode of goodness, everything is intentional. You're not just like grabbing something that's there and stuffing it in your mouth because it's convenient and calling it a meal, but you're like, all right, no, we're gonna do this right. So I need wholesome, healthy, fresh, organic, vegetarian, nice foods, and I'm gonna cook it. I'm gonna prepare things nicely in a calm atmosphere, keep everything very clean, and do it as an act of devotion for Krishna, and then it's nice, right? So we need to set aside enough time to do things properly, to do things nicely in the mode of goodness. So over endeavor is like destructive. We end up living an imbalanced life and having to just accept impure food and other things just because of convenience. Take shortcuts. Yeah, we end up taking a lot of shortcuts, and the shortcuts usually lead to compromising our principles. So yeah, Atyahara Prasascha Prajalpa. Prajalpa means gossip, basically, right? Speaking just about mundane nonsense. So that makes us impure. Yeah, that counteracts purity because it's contaminating. You're just like, especially when it gets into like criticizing and just complaining, moaning and groaning about stuff. Talk that's just mundane and not productive. Sometimes we need to talk about things that are kind of material, like, okay, guys, we need to like clean the house or, fix the whatever, or figure out how to get rid of the fruit flies in the kitchen, or, I mean, in one sense, it's mundane. In another sense, it's all in Krishna's service because this is Krishna house. So it's all dovetailed in Krishna's service. But yeah. It's not like, Krishna Lila. But still. But yeah, when it gets into like just complaining and criticizing and gossiping, especially in ways that are not very respectful or kind to the people that we're talking about. It's okay to talk about people because we're persons and we're interested in each other's lives. We care about each other, so we want to know, right? We want to know when we see someone we haven't seen for a while. It's like, hey, what you been up to lately? Let's catch up, you know. And you might ask them, how's this person doing, right? Like, how are your kids? How are your parents? How are your friend? How's your husband? Whatever, right? So, but it's not gossip. It's just, it's just being personal. Yeah. So gossip comes when it's like, oh, did you see this person? They ran off with that person, or this person they got caught like, stealing a boga out of the kitchen fridge, the restaurant fridge, or this person like, yeah, they got in the car together and they drove away. I don't know where they went. I can only imagine. But like, and you start just criticizing and making scandals and assumptions and in a negative way. So that's prajalpa that really destroys our devotional service. And then niyamagraha. Yeah, niyamagraha means there's two ways of looking at it. One is that you reject the regulative principles of the scriptures and you just act whimsically, right? So the scriptures say something, you're just like, I'm not going to do that. I'll just, I don't think that's very important for me. And, I know what's good for me. Krishna doesn't know. I know. Right? So then we reject the scriptures and do our own thing. Or, and Prajalpa Niyamagraha Janasanga, associating with materialistic people. So yeah, getting association with people who are basically living for material sense gratification, who are committing sinful activities, they don't have faith in God, they don't support our spiritual practice, right? So that they're antagonistic to spiritual life, basically. So that kind of association is contaminating. That's like probably out of all of the six, it's the worst. And then the last one is lolyam, being greedy for mundane things or mundane achievements. Yeah, so wanting to have like high position in society, to have name and fame, and people to, you know, adore us, worship us, whatever, to be put on a pedestal like that. So, because the thing is that to get a position, often we'll become competitive and try to put others down so that we can get put up, or it becomes selfish. It becomes like an ambitious, race to the top. And then we end up also compromising our principles and just not being humble servants of the servant, right? Which is important for spiritual life. Yeah, so those are the things that Rupa Goswami gives that the original question was like, what blocks us from being pure, right? Yeah. So that's what he tells us. Okay. And then he says, on the other hand, there are 6 things that support our pure devotional service, which is being enthusiastic for spiritual life, right? Doing all of our serving, doing them enthusiastically, being confident, right? Confidence means having strong faith that the process works, that Krishna is God, that I'm a soul, that I have a relationship with Krishna. That relationship can be revived by these processes of bhakti. And yeah. And then if we have confidence, then we will be more enthusiastic, right? And then the third thing is patience, being patient, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? It's a long journey back home, back to Godhead. And we're not going to become pure devotees overnight, or not even in 2 weeks, or even in 2 months, or 2 years, or maybe not even in 20 years. So it's a long haul. We've been in the material world for many lifetimes, and we've accumulated a lot of material conditioning. And so we need to gradually, purify those layers off. and stick to it. So utsaham nishya tat tat karma pravartana. So that means yeah, acting according to the scriptures. Let's see. Yeah, acting according to regular principles like devotional service. Didn't go to do that. Abandoning the association of non-devotees. So the other one, because we just heard about how that destroys our purity. So just don't do it, that, associating with devotees instead. And following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. Okay, so having good role models here in this life, right? Our mentors and gurus, and also previous acharyas like Srila Prabhupada and his guru Bhaktivinoda Thakur and six Goswamis, learning about their lives. Narottam Das Thakur. Nowadays we have such nice books. There's a nice book, The Glorious Life of Srila Narottam Das Thakur. There's a book about Bhaktivinoda Thakur called The Seventh Goswami. There's there's like 3-volume books about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's life. There's Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, it's like 6 volumes or something. So we have all these books about the lives of our acharyas, and so we can read those, and then we can understand how to follow in their footsteps, not just following the process that they followed, but learning their mood, understanding their mission, and understand how they dealt with situations, and getting a sense of all of their qualities and how we can try to imbibe those. And yeah, so those things are all favorable for our purity. Okay. Jai. So we'll just read this last verse because this is going to sum up this part about austerity. 17:17. Shraddhaya paraya taptam tapas tatri vidam narai apala kankshibir yuktai satvikam parichakshate. You want any Pragati? You have it?
This threefold austerity performed with transcendental faith by men and not expecting material benefits, but engaging.
Okay. Yeah, so we looked at these 3 things: austerities of the body, which means offering respects to superiors, cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and nonviolence. And then austerity of speech was speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, not agitating to others, and reciting Vedic literature. And then today we did the austerities of the mind: satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of its existence. So he says when we do all of these with faith, with transcendental faith, for the sake of the Supreme, right? We do these for the pleasure of the Lord without expecting any material benefits from doing it, right? So we're not doing it just so we can feel good, just so we can have a peaceful, happy life, but we're doing it so that by feeling good, we can serve Krishna. We can become more steady in our service. We can be more enthusiastic in our service, less disturbed. And yeah, we can do these things so that we can become better servants of Krishna. And Krishna says that's austerity in the mode of goodness. So mode of goodness leads to knowledge and happiness, to the springboard to the spiritual platform. So that's austerity in the mode of goodness. Jai, and it's 5 o'clock. Oh, you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. So then we'll wrap it up. Let's just see if anybody's out there in YouTube land. Oh, no, only Carrie saying Hare Krishna. Hey, Carrie, thanks for joining us. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila